So, The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom was, of course, one of my most anticipated games for 2024. There's a few games left that I'm looking forward to, but I had high hopes for this game. And yeah, it looked different than a traditional Legend of Zelda game, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I have liked different styles of Zelda games. Obviously something like Triforce Heroes, okay, that wasn't a good different, but something like Spirit Tracks, something like Phantom Hourglass, like, yeah, they were weird, but I didn't think they were bad games inherently. I thought they were just different than what you would expect from the Legend of Zelda franchise. So, of course, we've gotten lots of reviews for the Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom. It's sitting at about a Metacritic score similar to the DS games, and I thought, that's probably appropriate for this game. Now, I've been playing this game for about 5 or so hours, and I'm kind of mixed on it. I'm a lot more mixed than I thought I was going to be with this game, because I think there are some really good elements to it, and then there are just some elements that I just don't like. So we're going to start off with the good, kind of wrap up on the things that I don't necessarily like with the game, and then I guess I'll just let you decide, based on my words, what your interest level is in this game, because more than likely, if you're super interested in this game, you've already bought it anyways. Now, all of the gameplay I'm showing you is from very early in the game. Like I said, I'm about 5 or so hours in. I've beaten a couple of different dungeons and stuff like that. And I will say, one of the things I do like about this game is the art style. Now, I wasn't a huge fan of the Link's Awakening remake that they did as far as the art style was concerned, but I feel like they honed it in a little bit. Everything's not quite as shiny as it used to be, and I actually think it looks pretty good, from a visual standpoint, especially from a standstill standpoint. Spoiler alerts, that plays a role later on in this video, but I like the use of colors. I like the different characters that I've come across, the different enemy types and stuff like that, and I think they did a pretty good job of the visual style of the game and the art style of the game in here. Now, of course, the main problem with this game is that you play as a woman. I have to play as Zelda? Like, what are we doing here? That's a joke. We're still on the good stuff with this game. Obviously, they changed up the gameplay quite a bit from what we've seen in previous Legend of Zelda games, which actually says quite a lot, because Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were great departures from the traditional Legend of Zelda formula. And I think it's kind of a blend of old and new with this sort of thing. Now, obviously, the big change within this game, Echoes of Wisdom, is, of course, just the way you do pretty much anything. As far as traversal battle is concerned, you are relying on these things called echoes. Now, echoes can consist of stagnant objects such as beds, crates, trees, or they can extend to enemy types. When you first defeat an enemy type, you can then acquire their echo. Now, not all echoes are created equal. There are different levels of echoes that you'll encounter throughout the game. The higher level echo, like, they'll be the same thing as something you've gotten before, but they'll be a higher level. And when they come to be a higher level, they do more damage, they have more life to them and whatnot. And you do have a limited amount of how many echoes you can spawn at one time. Now, the deeper you get into the game, you unlock more of these things that you can use in order to put more echoes out there. So it almost feels a bit like a real-time puzzle strategy game at times. And you know what? I kind of like that vibe. Like, it's interesting. It's a game where you can't really just brute force your way through things. You kind of got to think about how you're going to get somewhere or how you're going to defeat a certain enemy. You got to figure out which types of your echoes work best against certain enemy types or in certain situations or certain traversal situations to make things go easier. It definitely feels very different, but I like the concept. I think the concept of it is actually pretty interesting. It translates into boss battles as well. Of course, you do get an ability to where you can have a more traditional feel to it, but there is an energy meter that is contingent on that, and that energy meter will run out. And when that energy meter does run out, you have to go into the voids in order to get more of this energy. So you can't really get it up in the upper world. You've got to go into the void, defeat some enemies and stuff like that, and then you could build up this meter once again. Now, when you defeat enemies in the void, you will then recharge it up, so you can use it quite a bit in the void. And, you know, it feels good. It levels up as well. This also has a system where you have a different leveling for your actual sword as far as damage is concerned. You can have it so that the time lasts longer when you have access to the sword. It's pretty cool. Storyline wise, I mean, you know, it's fine. These rifts have popped up all over the land and you have to explore them. I do kind of like how there is a bit of freedom to the game. Like, you're not necessarily set in how you do things. Like, it is a little bit linear, but there are options within the linearity that I do feel kind of add a sense of exploration to the game. There's also lots of side quests that you encounter in there as well. Areas, although contained, do feel like they have lots of secrets, you know, heart pieces, rupees, and stuff like that. There's a whole smoothie system in the game that, you know, I don't love it. That we're kind of in the middle part of the video where I talk about things that I'm just indifferent towards. You basically get different items along your journey that you can then go to a smoothie shop and combine the items and make a smoothie. These smoothies, of course, have different abilities for you. Fire resistance, freezing resistance, stuff like that. Different lengths of time, but how long they last. Some of them will super heal you. It's fine. It's definitely something that is pushed a bit in this game because a lot of times you'll see like a treasure chest and sometimes there's just items in there, like things like that, like materials that you use to make a smoothie, and you're kind of like, well, was it really worthwhile to do it? Now, one of the interesting things was that with your little Echo friend helper thing, you could basically move certain things within levels themselves, different sorts of objects, different sorts of enemies. It's almost like a Tears of the Kingdom mechanic, and I think it works well enough. You know, sometimes it can be a little bit cumbersome feeling. I don't hate it, but I don't necessarily love it. Like, you have to be angled right to have it so that you can grab the item that you're trying to do and stuff like that. You kind of see what I'm getting at here is you do have a lot of freedom, but with that freedom, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming because the easiest answer might not be the answer that you're necessarily thinking of. It throws a lot of stuff at you, and it gives you the ability to play the game that how you want to play it, but there clearly is a definitive way. Not to say that there's a right way, but there's a way that the game kind of expects you to do something. And if you don't do it that way, if you go about it in a different way because your brain thinks in a different way than the developer's brains does, you might have a little bit more trouble accomplishing something. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I mean, options are always a good thing, but it does feel like they do throw a lot at you. Now we have to get into the negative stuff. And the first thing we're going to talk about is within the echoes themselves, because there are a lot of echoes in this game. You are constantly getting new echoes. There's over, I think, 120 different echoes in the game. And the management for the echoes is absolutely atrocious. You have seen me having to constantly pull up this menu, and there's a quick button to get into the menu. But that doesn't help me. Okay, you can organize things by like different types and, you know, newest and, you know, what kind of type it is, but it is still very cumbersome to constantly have to go into this menu, and it really breaks up the flow of the game for me. It almost makes things kind of come to a standstill when I'm trying to sit there and scroll and find the right freaking thing that I'm trying to find. You get comfortable using certain echoes as well, and maybe you don't explore that much, but I still haven't learned where specific echoes are because there's so many and I'm getting more. So now it's adding into it. It's adding on top of that. And it's very frustrating to manage these, and I really feel like that does play into the gameplay, and it makes me, I don't know, and this could just be a personal thing, but it makes me not want to play this game for long periods of a time because I feel like I'm constantly having to pull up this menu when I'm in battle. You know, maybe the echo that I'm using for this battle isn't the right one. Well, now I've got to pull up this menu system and figure out which sort of creature I want to put out there to win this battle for me. I might have used something wrong in order to build a platform to go up somewhere else. Well, now I got to figure out, well, what do I want to do? I just feel like I'm in a menu so often playing this game, and it kind of takes me a bit out of it. And another problem that the game has is you've been seeing my footage here. I recorded this footage at 60 frames per second, okay? This is not via my capture card. with making it look all wonky. It is the game itself. The game constantly fluctuates with different frame rates. Sometimes it'll be at 60. Sometimes it'll be at 30. Sometimes it'll just jump up and down. There have literally been times when I'm playing this game and I almost feel a little bit disconnected from my controller. It doesn't happen often, but there are times where it's like my inputs feel severely delayed because I'm in an area where the game is trying to change the frames per second. Now, I'm not an FPS whore. You guys know that. You know, if a smooth 30 is fine for me, a smooth 60 is preferred, but a smooth 30 is fine for me. If there's little basic drops, you know, 59, 58, 57, whatever, it's not a huge deal. But when you're essentially halving the frame rate in certain times, it's very noticeable. It's very jarring, and it's something that takes me a bit out of the game because it can happen in an instant, and I don't know that there's a specific thing that sort of triggers it. Sometimes it does happen in busier areas, but I've been in fields, and then all of a sudden, like, I'm just going into a different area, and all of a sudden the frame rate dips, and then it comes right back up. Now, if I'm alone, that's not a big deal, but if I'm in the middle of a battle or something like that, then it becomes very problematic. And, you know, the fact that these... My two chief complaints about this game, the inventory management system and the inconsistent frame rate, you know, these aren't things that are just kind of minor things. These are things that actually play into how the game plays, how the game feels when you are playing it. And I just got to be honest, like, I would have rather it just been a locked 30 frames per second. You know, I think it would have been a better experience. You get used to a 30 frames per second. You get used to a 60 frames per second. But when it's constantly shifting up and down, and then you throw in this archaic menu system that you're constantly having to go into all of the time through traversal, through battles, it just kind of wears on me a little bit. Like, I think there's really good ideas here. I just wish the execution was done a little bit better. Because to me, I mean, I hate to say it, but I'm a little disappointed with this game. I'm a little bit disappointed. I think if they would have streamlined the inventory management, if they would have just made it so that you could maybe like fast keys certain things and, you know, something like that or something, or, you know, had a more stable frame rate while you play throughout this game, I think the experience would have been a lot better for me. But as it stands now, it's kind of like, you know, I play it for an hour and I'm like, oh, I need a break. Like, I'm tired of sifting through menus. I'm tired of trying to figure out, you know, what I need to do. And then, oh, this isn't working. Let me pull up another menu. I'm kind of tired of the inconsistent performance of the game. I think underneath it, there is a very unique sort of game here, but I don't think I love it. And that's just me. You know, I think people will genuinely enjoy this game. It could end up being one of their favorite Zelda games ever, and I wouldn't argue with that or anything like that. I'm just speaking from my perspective. And from my perspective, you know, it's all right. You know, it's good. But with Zelda games, you just expect a little bit more sometimes. At least I do. Let me know what you think of Echoes of Wisdom in the comments section down below. Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? I mean, either way is fine, dude. Like, people are going to be pissed off at me anyways, but, you know, I really thought that this game could be up there with something like Astrobot for my game of the year. But as it stands now, I mean, Astrobot's still at the king of the hill for me. Maybe I am a PlayStation guy after all. And as always, guys, be sure to like and share the video around. Leave me your thoughts. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.